Testing, testing, testing.
Louise Lucas, thank you for your great leadership. And Delegate Coiner, thank you so much for your leadership. We need both of you. We're grateful for how strong you are and the ways in which you're looking at just the right issues at just the right time. These are vital conversations, and I have to tell you, looking at the entire spectrum of education is really important right now. This is a time of change like I can't really remember in my entire career, and I've been doing this a really long time. And the changes are happening and really are impactful from the PK level all the way through to postgraduate. And it's because people are changing, their needs are changing. We really have to pay attention to that and think about how we put what we put together ends up mattering like it should for the people whose needs we are there to address. Learners' needs have changed and accelerated by the pandemic. That change is accelerated by the pandemic. You know, there's, for instance, we just looked at some data this morning, a persistent gap of 3 to 5 points in fifth graders' math skills between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, and their pre-COVID peers, rather, I should say. And so the bottom line is there's an awful lot there that we've got to pay attention to. I'm very fascinated by the focus that you put on reading, and I'm so glad to see that. It's a major key to the success that students have in college. The National Center for Education Statistics showed that the national literacy level has now declined. And that's a problem because it will ultimately be something that we have to look at and think about and deal with in higher education. We also know that early learning leads to higher test scores in terms of, and absolutely the ability to do better in math in particular, but it also is correlated to staying in school and going to college, and that's what we need. I'm watching a lot of changes in our students across campus in particular, where I spend most of my time with students. I'm seeing a much higher level of anxiety than I have ever seen. That concerns me because a lot of these kids just simply do not deserve that. When I say kids, I mean kids of all ages, people of all ages. And I'm seeing concerns in overall wellness. Obviously, I'm talking about physical, but I'm particularly talking about mental and spiritual. It is absolutely vital that we find ways to get students much more engaged, so that they see a connection between what we're trying to teach and how this becomes important to them in the context of their overall lives. They're smart people. Kids are smarter than they've ever been for lots of reasons. And because of that, it's really important that we respond to the why. They're all asking why. I hear more middle school and high school kids asking today, why am I learning this? What good is this going to do me? We don't make those connections. I think that's a real challenge for us. We have to honor their interest in knowing more about why. Education is a critical foundation for this country. It has been a pathway to the American dream. But we know in our conscience, we know that we have a lot more work to do to ensure that there is greater access for every human being to all levels of education, so that no matter what they decide to do in a civil society, but as well as they can possibly do it. Ultimately, I think it's also the key to our competitiveness. I had a chance to meet with Jason Alkubi last week, and I really enjoyed that from VEDP. We talked a lot about the competitiveness of Virginia, nationally, but also internationally. It's about attracting businesses that will create great jobs, but it's also about using education to inspire people of all ages to think about things like entrepreneurship and creating new jobs for other people and, of course, for themselves. We do something in what we call the VCU Shift Retail Lab. 147 new ventures that we consulted with there. Tomorrow, some of my colleagues will have an opportunity to connect with you, and I'm really glad, from the community colleges, but also from College of William and Mary, and also from our universities. They're going to talk with you about really important issues around workforce readiness, but also internships. I'm jazzed about internships. In fact, I want to see us all get to the point where in Virginia, you go to one of our universities, you go to VCU, we want to be able to guarantee you that if you want an internship, we're going to get you one. And I want them to be paid, and I want you to be able to get credit for it. It takes the burden off of a lot of our students. Is this thing working? I can't quite tell. Or maybe I'm just yelling. Because I'm excited about what you're doing, and I'm so glad that you're doing this. As we go forward, colleges and universities really have to be key partners in forming deeper partnerships with everyone, including our employers, public employers, private employers, employers at every level. And we've got to be thinking about creating more entrepreneurs in our state. That's how this country was founded. It's a critical part of how we go forward. VCU will be your partner in every way in engaging human beings at every level in every way that we possibly can. After all, we've got to live up to our reputation that U.S. News and World Report has just given us. They named us one of the top 20 most innovative public universities in the country. We'll live up to that. Thank you. And lastly, I would be remote if I didn't say to all of you a sincere thanks for your investment. In just the last many years in particular, the significant investment that you've made in education at all levels, and in particular in higher education, I'm really grateful for that. We've taken together financial aid to levels that we've never had it at VCU. We are an accessible institution that focuses on bringing as many people to VCU as possible. And our students are not leaving with the debt that they left with before because you're helping us address that. You have increased our appropriation. You have done so much to help make VCU what it is. And so if I leave you with any thought on top of everything else I've said, it is a sincere, heartfelt thank you. I am your guy who's happy to do this day in and day out for you. But when you give me resources, it makes me able to accelerate our accomplishment of this really critical mission that impacts society here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank you so much for being at VCU. Have a wonderful day, and whatever you need, ask any one of us, and we'll try to take care of it for you. Bye-bye.
Deke, I have the good fortune of serving as the president of the Hunt Institute. Before Dr. Rao walks out, I do want to say we've done this. This is our 9th annual summit here in Virginia. We've been here a few times at VCU. Of all the universities, community college, K-12 places we've been to, his team, when he says that he wants to be your partner, he means that. They have availed every resource in this beautiful facility, and it's amazing what has happened here under his leadership. And I worry one day, because he's been here so long, is tomorrow going to be the day he leaves? So I just want us to take a moment to signal our gratitude for his leadership while we have him. And no, we want you to be here tomorrow. But it's amazing what this university has accomplished under your leadership, Mr. President. Thank you so much. And thank you for your hospitality. The 9th annual summit, I'd be remiss. We were in Missouri last week. It was their 6th annual summit. We started this idea of scaling this legislative retreat in North Carolina 21 years ago when Governor Hunt came out of office. And the Institute is named after a 4-term governor from North Carolina, Governor Jim Hunt. And he wanted to do work with the legislature because he knew as a governor after 16 years, all the good ideas that he had or his team had, they were just ideas without the legislative involvement, engagement. And so he wanted to start building capacity with lawmakers. I'm sure to a certain extent probably was to make sure they did things that he wanted to see done. But this really, what we've turned this model into with our great board member, her partnership, Secretary Laura Novy, has truly been remarkable. And let me speak to that. It wasn't a few years ago, Senator Lucas, who's been doing and chairing this for several years now, invited up to the newly minted, newly elected House member, and we went ODU, Norfolk. And 2 years later, Virginia has positioned itself as the leading state when it comes to a comprehensive literacy act. And that's a bipartisan bill that Delegate Coiner and Senator Lucas, because they were, one, they wanted to be part of a solution. They got to hear from folks on the agenda. They went and did some work with their teams, and then they worked together across the aisle to get something done. And you all obviously voted it through and have been refining it and still going to continue to clean it up. But that's the type of people you'll be hearing from over the next 2 days. We're going to be talking about things from prenatal to post-secondary. This is your agenda. For those of you that are new to this retreat or new members coming in, we've always tried to create spaces where it's your agenda. If you have a question, you have a thought, you have a microphone. Those microphones are there for you to engage, interrupt. We want to make sure you walk out of each session making sure your questions are answered, because this convening is your convening. Kerry Coyner and Senator Louise Lucas set the agenda with great input from many of you probably. So hopefully this agenda is a strong reflection of the entire collection of both committees. With that said, I again would like to turn it over to our partner in crime, Senator Louise Lucas. Thank you for your leadership, ma'am.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Dr. Siddiqui and President Rao for your warm welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2023 Virginia Education Summit. I'm Senator L. Louise Lucas, as already been mentioned, honored to represent the 18th Senatorial District in the Virginia Senate, serving as the chair currently of Senate Education and Health and as President Pro Tem of the Senate, and it is my privilege. Additionally, I'm proud to be a member of the Hunt Institute Hunt King Leadership Fellowship, and I'm delighted to serve as a co-chair of this summit. Throughout the summit, we'll have the opportunity to hear from leading experts on a range of important topics who will provide invaluable insights as we navigate pressing questions in the legislature. The summit is a collaborative space where we can celebrate the successes of our students and educators and collectively address challenges that remain across the education continuum. I look forward to engaging with all participants and learning along with you over these next 2 days. I hope to use what I learned at this institute in my work in the upcoming legislative session. I hope that each of you will gain much from this experience too, and will leave here with action items and ideas about how we can better support students across the Commonwealth. Thank you again, the Hunt Institute, for making the summit possible, and for my fellow summit co-chair, Delegate Kerry Coyner, for your very hard work. And now at this point, I'd like to turn it over to my cohort, Delegate Kerry Coyner.
Lucas, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd also like to thank Javaid and the team at Hunt Institute for working with the Senator and I as we planned a relevant agenda to bring to everyone in the room today. I am Delegate Kerry Coyner. I proudly represent the current 62nd District, the new 75th District, but all the same areas here in the Richmond area. And I've served as chair for the Early Childhood and Innovation Committee, subcommittee of the Education Committee. It was an honor to plan the agenda alongside Senator Lucas and ensure that topics that people have brought bills on and people went, I'm not sure what all of that does, that we were able to flesh those out and bring experts to talk about them. And really excited for the opportunities that we're going to hear about today to improve education for students and families across the Commonwealth. I look forward to the opportunity to engage in conversations alongside colleagues in the House and Senate and newly elected members who have joined us here today as well. So with that, I have the honor of kicking off, introducing my colleague, Delegate David Bulova, to introduce our first session. Delegate Bulova, the floor is yours. You're welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. And I'm going to give our panelists a couple of seconds to get themselves situated, since they are the most important part of what we're going to be doing. I'm David Bulova. I have the privilege of representing the 37th District in the Virginia House of Delegates, which is soon to be the 11th District. For those of you who have not memorized your district numbers, that is the city of Fairfax and parts of Fairfax County, including George Mason University. First of all, I do want to thank the Hunt Institute and our co-patrons for putting together a really fantastic program. And I think it's going to be an extraordinarily educational 2 days. Education is probably, actually, I wrote probably most definitively the most important investment that we make as a state and as a General Assembly. And so even though it's a very busy time, actually, it's really important that we step back and focus on education and put it in context as we go into the 2024 General Assembly session. I'm very delighted to be able to introduce our first session, which appropriately starts at the beginning and is the business case for early childhood investment. We are all here because we deeply care about education in Virginia. And we all know that education does not start with kindergarten. In fact, I think you could make a very powerful case that the most important time for learning is birth through 5. A statistic that really struck me as being very powerful, because Delegate Coiner and I sit on the Early Childhood Care and Education Council, is that 1 million synapse connections are made per, not year, not month, not week, not day, per second in a child between birth and 5. And that's really, really incredible. And another statistic that we need to take real good attention to is that children who enter kindergarten ready to learn have a much better chance in terms of their outcomes than those who don't. And it's that strong foundation in life that allows for a child to succeed both socially and economically. I will say that my family is kind of the poster child for early childhood education. All 3 of my children benefited from it. It allowed for me and my wife to be able to contribute to the economy. And quite frankly, she has contributed much more to the economy than I have. So I think if it really came down to it, I'd be staying home and she going out to the workforce. But when you think about it, that economic benefit is really multiplied many times over when we focus on parents who otherwise could not afford quality education. And it's only recently that we've been able to start to quantify the economic impacts of early childhood education. And so in addition to the Nation Ready report that is mentioned in the agenda, we also had a recent Vanderbilt report that found that the $309 million that us as a General Assembly invested in FY23 generated or would generate at least $364 million in return, with increased tax revenue of at least $30 million in the short term. And that's pretty powerful. Even more powerful, though, is that in the long term, that investment will drive at least $778 million in combination of savings and economic benefits over the lifetime of those 11,000 children who received care because of these investments. The thing is that our business economy recognizes the importance of these investments, as do our competing states. And so in order for our state to continue to recruit businesses and industry to support our growing economy, we must ensure that families have access to high quality, reliable health care. And this session, if I can, is going to be kind of the first test of that commitment to early childhood education. We were the benefit of about $300 million from federal funding to support early childhood education, which of course is going away. And so we couldn't have a more timely discussion than today about funding for early childhood education. The panelists today will lead us through a conversation about opportunities to strengthen and expand our network of early childhood education care and learning, both for Virginia's children and families, as well as for our economy. So leading this conversation will be Marika Cox Mitchell, Vice President of Early Childhood at Bainham Family Foundation. Marika will introduce our conversation and our panelists. Marika, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is now yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for starting this conversation off with a focus on early childhood education. This may seem simple, but it's actually transformative. It is mind-blowing. It recognizes that education begins with infants and toddlers. This conversation recognizes that learning begins before kindergarten. This conversation also recognizes that being a competent early childhood educator requires specialized knowledge and skills, much more complex than what we often call daycare. Here's what it looks like in practice. At the Bainham Family Foundation, we support an early childhood education program in Lorton, Virginia. Last week, I received an unsolicited photo of what the toddler teachers posted on their classroom wall. I'm going to read verbatim. This week in Toddler 104, we explored signs comparing two things that are same and different. Math, counting and sorting, social emotional, checking on friends when they are sad, and labeling our own emotions. Gross motor, hopping, stomping, and marching from place to place. Fine motor, ripping paper, squeezing glue bottles, and holding thin brushes. Language and literacy, discussing letters we see, predicting stories based on the pictures, and practicing words and numbers in other languages. These toddlers are receiving a solid education foundation. These toddlers are tomorrow's third graders. These toddlers are tomorrow's workforce. In addition, the funding and support from the Bainum Family Foundation also ensures that all families have access to these educational experiences. The families we support pay no more than 10% of their incomes for childcare. No more than 10%, whether they have one child enrolled in this program or multiple children. These families include a two-parent household. Dad is a truck driver, mom is an elementary school teacher. Two-parent household. Dad is a project manager, mom is a dental assistant. Two-parent household. Dad is an entrepreneur and mom is a Capitol police officer. Two-parent household. Grandparents working to raise their grandchild. This child was on his way to the foster care system. The only reason the grandparents were able to support their grandchild is because they could enroll their grandchild in an accessible, affordable, high-quality program. That child entering the foster care system would have cost taxpayers more. A single-parent household, a mother working as an early childhood educator. Oh, the irony. The irony of being able to provide high-quality early childhood education for a group of toddlers and can't afford that same experience for your own child. So this is why we're here. We're here to make the business case for early childhood education. Please help me welcome the panelists. That includes Jason Elkoby, President and CEO of Virginia Economic Development Partnership, Cindy Cisneros, Vice President of Education Programs, Committee for Economic Development, and Dr. Amy Doran, Corporate Director of Early Care and Education, Ballard Health. Thank you. So Jason, we're going to start with you. You were recently elected to the board of the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation. Why is access to early education an important issue for economic development?
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me here today. And I'm really appreciate the way you phrased that question, because one of the great institutions we have here in Virginia is the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation. And it's so just profoundly important to shaping this conversation here in Virginia. Why is this important to business? Why is it important to economic development? Why am I here today? Well, I would say there's really kind of two reasons. One is when you think about why Virginia has been relatively successful in economic development, relatively successful in developing, delivering prosperity, sustaining prosperity across the Commonwealth and all of its regions. Why have we been successful in attracting some of the most significant economic development projects in American history? Why have we outperformed the country on most measures of socioeconomic health? A heck of a lot of it gets back to the fact that Virginia is America's top state for talent. When you look at so many reasons why Virginia has been outperformed other states, has been successful, so much of that comes back to the fact that our human capital is an advantage for Virginia. And it's something that we need to strengthen and sustain. When you look at why Virginia has done well, so much of it has to do with the quality of our K through 12 education, the quality of our higher education, the fact that we've provided very targeted supports. But all of that rests on a foundation of what's happening in Virginia and across America, frankly, in early childhood. And if we're not providing a strong foundation through early childhood care and education, all of the work that comes after that is so much harder. To the extent that we do not invest in that, to the extent that we do not strengthen that, we do so at our peril. So that's one big reason. Is it is just such a smart investment in our future, not just the future of our children, but the future of our economy. That's the first reason. The second reason is that childcare has become an obstacle. When you look at our economy today, the choice of individual workers to enter the labor market, to do the work that society depends on them to do, business, communities. For many of them, for many people, access to quality, affordable, accessible childcare is it's either an opportunity if they have it, or if they don't have it, it is an obstacle. One of the things that has been great news for Virginia in terms of its economic performance over the last few years has been the recovery of our labor force participation rate, which dipped everywhere. It dipped everywhere in America, in the world, frankly, in the aftermath of the pandemic. Virginia is bucking national trends right now in terms of labor force participation. We're not only stronger in terms of labor force participation than the rest of America, we're one of the few states that has surpassed our pre-COVID baseline. Now, there's a few reasons for that, and I think one of the biggest ones is the fact that we've made childcare more accessible. This is absolutely a business issue. If you talk to business people that are